Alright everyone, so I am absolutely loving where we are at right now in Elbaf. Last chapter, if you recall, I felt as though the tension of the situation had been undercut a little bit, but this chapter I think things continued to ramp up perfectly. It really feels like we're in the full-scale swing of a really epic war happening at this moment on this island that just pretty much launched out of nowhere. That's the brilliance of Killingham's ability. He can basically create an army of genuinely significant threats out of thin air. So that was one of the things I was thinking about. With the Gods Knights, they seem like a small elite task force, but how are they able to really bring about like the level of force you would need to take on a Yonko crew or something, because you need a lot more foot soldiers. What they're producing right now is basically the equivalent of like any Yonko crew's army of foot soldiers. It's probably more formidable if anything, considering it's put the entire nation of Elbaf on its heels and under pressure so effortlessly, while Killingham is literally out there just having dinner. So the continued pressure of the situation is what I'm really enjoying. The fact that everywhere we turn, even though there's still gag moments and everything, because it's still One Piece, but everywhere that we turn, everyone is taking this very seriously and is very stressed by the situation that's going on. And it feels like the Strats are already pretty invested in the situation, and I like that we're getting to see some of the Strats who normally don't get as serious or analytical give their 2 cents. Like, seeing Brook break down the fact that there are multiple Gods Knights at play here, that's really cool to see. I would love to see more of that. Although I did really appreciate the skull joke that he made this chapter. I think that joke about him being the skeleton was one of the funniest Brook moments in a minute, at least from my perspective. But first, this month we have some of the most legendary islands in One Piece for you. You can get God Valley, Marijua, Laugh-Tale, and Impel Down. The posters are printed on matte paper, hand cut by the artist himself. Each of these posters can be purchased individually, or you can get all 4 of them together for 50% off. You can also still get the premium package if you want to appear on my streams, and in that case you can also choose any poster from 2024 as well. So if you want God Valley, Marijua, Laugh-Tale, and Impel Down for your walls, just hit the link in the description below. All posters from 2024 will also be available in the complete original set bundle. So the biggest thing is that it felt like this chapter had a sense of momentum, and it is making it clear, this is one of the most important things to me when it comes to tension and stakes, it is making it clear that this problem, one, the characters are very emotionally invested in solving it. They need to save these giant kids because they're kids, they need to be protected, so everybody's emotionally invested, and two, they're actually struggling with how to solve this problem because it's not an easy fix by any means. They all are concerned about how they're going to fix this. Just seeing the fact that Oda wrote in from the beginning, okay, it's not easy to just put a barrier in front of the kids to stop them from walking along. That's something that I talked about in past streams. I was like, why don't they just do that? Oda answered that question right away. Because the brilliance of Somers' scheme is that if you try to stop any of the kids, they're going to continue hurting each other. It feeds into the idea that love is pain. The more you try to save them, the more you're going to hurt them. So having to come up with this alternative method of like getting them one by one, bit by bit, picking them off the line, that does suggest that some kids are still ultimately going to be unable to be saved, but it seems like they're going to be able to save the majority of them. I do think this would be a really good moment for Robin to use her abilities. Her abilities are pretty much tailor-made for this sort of thing, so I need to see her doing that next chapter, otherwise I'm gonna rip my hair out. But still, just seeing the stress and panic with Saul and Robin's group, that's great stuff. Seeing the other Straw Hats get actually into the swing of the fight and be taking things seriously. I loved Usopp's little moment of him being like, yeah, of course we're gonna fight. He says it in a way that perfectly fits his character. He has grown. He is ready to be brave, and at least here in Elbaf, he is ready to be brave. But there's still that coward in him. He's fighting against that coward to be brave, so he says it in a small, soft voice, but he's still saying it nonetheless. So I love the way that Usopp's being treated here. I'm just really excited for this whole group of Straw Hats to really shine in the next couple chapters, because this really interesting thing happens when you eliminate the Monster Trio. The Monster Trio are so strong at this point that they can render a lot of stakes and seriousness, basically make them inconsequential. I remember when Green Bull was walking towards Wano, and then you cut to Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei just sitting there and basically being like, yeah, even if Green Bull had made it all the way over here, it's just a fake out scare. None of that means anything. There's no risk there whatsoever, right? But when you remove the Monster Trio from the equation and you drop this army of nightmare gigantic creatures on this nation, and then the best the Straw Hats have are basically the middle trio, Jinbei, and the weakling trio, suddenly you got a very exciting situation on your hands. And Elbaf is so huge that it's not like Luffy and Zoro and Sanji can just get back up to the Sun Realm that quickly. They really are separated by, thousands of meters or something like that. So all of a sudden, I'm getting hyped by characters I otherwise probably wouldn't be as hyped by. I want to see this little squad of Straws get in the action and see how they're able to deal with it. So then cutting to Colin and revealing that Colin is already setting off to get into the fray with his own little boat, it actually made me feel excited to see Colin. And Colin, by the way, I did a stream recently where I ranked, the best characters of Elbaf to worst. I actually have Colin as the worst character in Elbaf so far because I find him annoying because he's a 20-year-old man masquerading as a child. But you know what? This chapter, I didn't care. I thought Colin was cool. I thought it was cool to see Colin swooping in and being like, hey, I'll give you guys a ride to go take on the big monsters and everything like that. I love that. When you take away the strongest characters, it makes me more interested in seeing how are the others going to deal with it. It kills a lot of the tension if Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji were here and they're just one-shotting these monsters left and right. And in fact, this chapter even made me hyped about Dory and Brogy. I have not really taken Dory and Brogy seriously for some time. They were impressive back in Little Garden, and in Egghead they were actually not bad against the Gorosei. It's just that they never really did anything that impactful. They ended up just running away, and it was a lot of running away and laughing along with Luffy, so I'd kind of stopped thinking of them as serious forces. It was cool to see the entire nation of Elbaf under so much pressure, these giant creatures that the vast majority of the Elbaf giants have no hope of stopping. And then you see the legendary warrior pirates of the island returning in full force, using their signature move and just blasting him to pieces, and then coming through with this heroic entrance. I love that. Again, not as possible if Luffy's just around to solve the problems. I'm very interested to see how Dory and Brogy deal with the situation, how much of an impact Scopper Gaban can make, what the middle sort of tier of Straw Hats can do. All of that is a phenomenal setup because everyone can handle this situation, but it's likely that there's going to be some level of consequences in the sense that maybe a few of the kids do get kidnapped, which is a perfect setup for the end of the arc. It does seem like Shamrock has gone home, so I wouldn't be surprised if basically Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji, they don't have a direct opponent up there just yet, but it does set things up well for the rematch that we can assume at the end of the arc when both sides have full forces. So loved everything about this chapter, loved the tone, loved the continually escalating tension, love how it amped up my excitement for some of Elbaf's side characters. And then on top of that, we had two other major pieces, which is what's the deal with Gunko, and what's the deal with the ancient laboratory or ancient robot, whatever people think it is, that is 3,000 years old. I'm gonna be honest about that part of things. I do not know. I dropped a gigantic video breaking down everything that we know about the history of One Piece so far. So much stuff falls into place with the mural and the reveal about the three worlds of One Piece, but 3,000 years far back is really ancient. That is arguably first world stuff, or maybe something even before, because at this point we can rule nothing out. So I need some time to stew on that. And as for the Gunko stuff, this chapter cemented in my mind something very significant about that character, something that's a very comprehensive theory that I'm very interested in showing you all next Tuesday. I think that this basically goes to one of the two major tragic character storylines that Oda is crafting for Elbaf, Loki being the first one. I think on the flip side, Gunko and her place in the Gods Knights and her true story and future is the second one. There is something really big that Oda tipped off with her this chapter that puts everything about her so far into place. It just fits everything together. So watch out for next Tuesday's video. It is a significant one. And finally, we have a message from the Voice of the People, my top tier of patrons. So Jay says that Colin has the naivety of Kid Luffy and the bravado of adult Usopp. Two predictions are that, similar to Luffy, Colin will get captured like how Kid Luffy got captured and is in for a rude awakening. But after that, Colin's story will become tied to Usopp's journey to become a brave warrior of the sea and confronting his deadbeat dad. The thing is, I don't know so much about the Usopp side because I feel like Scopper Gaban is actually a pretty good dad, but maybe Colin could learn something about bravery from Usopp as somebody who is very cowardly but has had to overcome that cowardice many times to actually act as a brave warrior of the sea for so many chapters. Now, as for the Luffy situation, I would love that parallel to play out, where Colin, very similar to Kid Luffy, this hot-headed kid who thinks he's very brave, ends up getting captured, obviously this time in a much more significant scenario than just, Higuma the bandit, but actually by the Gods Knights. I would love to see that play out and love to see the lesson that could be learned from there. In the past case, it was Shanks who saved Luffy. I wonder if in this case it'll be Luffy who saves Colin, and it's kind of passing down of some wisdom along the way. So I'd love if that happens. If it gets tied to Usopp instead, that could connect another piece right there. But in general, I'm loving what Oda is doing so far in Elbaf with pretty much all the characters. Very excited for more of this, and I'm really looking forward to chapter 1145. So with that, I will talk to you all later.